about AMA discharges, or against medical advice. And I've written the title in perfect iambic pentameter. May today be the last day you say AMA. All right. So, Josh, why don't you do number 1?
Compared with standard discharges, this type of discharge is associated with an increased adjusted relative risk of 30-day mortality as high as 10%.
It's not a trick question.
Wait, am I supposed to say yes or no?
No, compare with this type of discharge. If you're discharged with this designation, your 30-day mortality goes up by as much as 10%.
Oh, am I supposed to say true or false?
Now, what kind of discharge?
Oh. Okay, I see.
Do you want Brian to do this one?
No.
I think he's on to it.
I know. So, AMA?
AMA discharge!
Okay.
That's right. You got it? Your 30-day mortality
Yeah.
is increased with an AMA discharge. All right.
Compared with standard discharges, this type of discharge is associated with 30-day readmission rate that are 20 to 40% higher. I say AMA discharge.
AMA discharges.
So these are relative risk increases?
Associated with increased adjusted relative risk, yeah.
This type of discharge is more likely among patients with substance use disorders, psychiatric illness, and HIV. An AMA discharge.
AMA discharge. How else could you, if you were to group those types of patients with those problems together, what's another term you could apply? People with substance use disorders, psychiatric illness, HIV. Marginalized, vulnerable, whatever, these are not, these are patients who are already at risk, so.
Which of the following patient characteristics is most strongly associated with risk for AMA discharge? Male gender, low income, presence of alcohol use disorder, presence of psychiatric illness, or history of AMA discharge? These all sound like
they are all
pretty strong risk
associated.
factors.
They are all risk factors for AMA discharge, but you are perhaps in a very good position to answer the one that's most strongly associated.
I would say history of AMA discharge.
No, it's actually something that you have in common with these patients.
Male gender.
Male gender, that's right.
Compared to patients discharged conventionally from the nursing department, 25% of patients discharged AMA reported this feeling about follow-up care. Were they less satisfied?
Oh, just not interested.
Not
Not likely to
okay.
follow up.
To persuade patients to remain hospitalized, 85% of trainees and 67% of attending physicians in one study informed their patients that insurance will not reimburse a hospitalization if they leave AMA. Identify 2 problems with this claim.
Well, at the VA, it doesn't matter.
It does not matter UPMC either.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and in this study, they could find no evidence of insurance companies not reimbursing the admission.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Also, it's just not the point of it, right?
It's not the point. It's also kind of coercive,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's a threat.
Studies of relevant case law involving adverse outcomes suffered by patients discharged AMA found that defendants prevailed because the plaintiff was not able to prove negligence. The inclusion of this documentation in the medical chart had no bearing on the verdicts. Is there an AMA discharge note or something?
Yeah. So any form signed by the patient or the provider had no bearing on the verdicts. The cases came down to was there negligence on the part of
So
the
it doesn't
physician.
matter if you wrote in your note patient left against medical advice. It doesn't matter.
We're going to talk about what you should be writing in your note, but it doesn't matter if you have a patient sign a form.
Okay.
And it's people who have written editorials about this have said that the form is also a coercive element.
What ethical standards should be applied when patients decline recommended inpatient treatment? So you should try to see if there are any outpatient options benevolence, I guess.
Yeah, so actually we're going to get to that too. So that's a great point. You got to ensure proper follow-up. But in that moment, and we kind of talked about this, Sam, in that moment when you're trying to decide, can I let this person leave? What do I do? How do you treat that encounter? You treat it the same way you would when you're doing a paracentesis, basically. What do we do when we help people make decisions, medical decisions? Autonomy. Sorry, it's ethical standard is confusing you. It's just informed consent, right? The principle of informed consent.
Right.
So you would treat the decision to leave like it's a procedure almost, and then you have to address the elements of consent. And so that's the next question.
So what are the 3 key elements of informed consent? Ability to understand the risks and benefits.
Right. So the risks of leaving would be, whatever is associated with not receiving the inpatient treatment that's recommended. What are the benefits?
They can do whatever they want to do.
Well, and my point here is because I want you guys to be writing this in a note, and when you're thinking of benefits, I want to know why the patient's leaving. Just saying that the guy got frustrated and left is sort of inadequate. I'd like to know that he left because, somebody's crashing in his house and he wants to get that person out of his house. Or there's always a reason, so it's nice to document that reason. And then the last thing, so risk, benefits, and
Alternatives.
Yeah. And then that's kind of where we get into the after discharge planning. We'll talk about that in a second. And that's the kind of documentation we look for. This is actually in the VA policy that says when a patient wants to leave, before you were planning on discharging him, that you need to document, their informed consent. And one last thing, what's a prerequisite for a patient consenting to a procedure or to a discharge? Right. So this becomes much more complicated if you don't think the patient has the capacity to make this decision. All right.
Number 10 seems like it's for all of us.
It is. Everyone can answer this.
Everyone has to list one thing they did against medical advice in the past month. I'm not always adherent with my own medications. I forget to take meds.
Yeah.
So I understand patients can
That's a good
have
one.
a slip up as well. So
Okay.
I've not been really exercising and not really deep into like low sodium.
Low sodium. I know. I low sodium is a problem for me. Like the beef jerky in the store downstairs.
I skipped the gym and had popcorn and wine for dinner instead. Which I feel like both of those things are probably not the best.
Yeah. I text and drive sometimes, which is really bad. I think that's the most egregious thing that's been
That might be
mentioned
against
so
legal
far.
advice too.
I'll cop to that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed my singular once or twice in the past month. I'd say that would be.
I swear to God, if I had a pill counter, I bet I'd be at 85, 90%.
It's hard, it really is.
Yeah.
I don't exercise.
Ever. Okay.
Except when you take the stairs here.
All right, Kevin, you should probably shut that off for my